put them on Lucas, bring them down, and then they can try and stuff. So the EMS physician community is trying to figure out what hospitals, what staff, what patients, what EMS services need to be involved in this kind of stuff. So we're still probably a year or two out from that at minimum.
So when we talk about, we talked about the veno-venous and the veno-arterial. Well, the big difference that you're going to see is a lot of times you're going to have these big tubes, and I'll show you some pictures of that are coming out of the patient. When it's veno-arterial, many times you're going to have that open chest. You're going to have pretty much kind of like an IV, except they're about this big around. They're huge tubes. Those are the lifelines. So that's your arterial and venous blood that's going to be coming out of the chest. And we are watching those. So many times when you like to transport, you take the patient, kind of roll them in the blanket, and then they're like this, and they're all strapped in. They're on your gurney stretcher thingy, and then you want to wheel them into the ambulance. And I'm sitting here going, take that blanket off, move this. No, you can't turn them. No, don't do this. And you're like, seriously, we got to get this patient moved. Well, they're hooked up to all these things, but if one of those things kink or one of those things come out, patient's dead, like that. So on the veno-arterial, many times it'll be in the chest. Sometimes it will be in the chest or the groin. So you have two major sites. Sometimes they're both in the groin. When there's veno-venous, which is mostly the respiratory, those are a lot easier transfers and a lot easier to support. Most of the time the access will be in the groin, sometimes in the neck, but they have a closed chest, they're not bleeding as much usually, and so they're not as many components. But those are two, one's percutaneous and the other one could be percutaneous or central access. And that's where we are, hey, take a look, are there any kinks? Best thing when we do when you're looking and you're walking with us and helping us, and I would say 99% of the time, just take a visual look. One of those tubes should be darker than the other. If they're both dark, that's a problem. One should be red and one should be not so red. If you see they're the same color, if they're both red, we're not as concerned, but we need to, very similar reds. Just let somebody know, go, hey, these are both red. That could be something mechanical that we need to make an adjustment. If they're both dark, that means maybe I didn't hook up oxygen. Maybe the oxygen on the ambulance isn't flowing, but there needs to be a difference in color. And so knowing where they're coming out of, if they're both here, one tube's going this way, one tube's going that way, those are things that you can definitely help us with. Talked about the different indications for VV. VA kind of talked about, here's a lot of times the one tube's going to come out venous, just like it should go to your lungs, it's going to come to me, we're going to turn blue blood red, and we're going to deliver it. Very simple in theory. Talked about where you're going to look. For VV ECMO, we talked about veno-venous. Many times you're going to have a catheter either in the neck, and those go gravity, and we act as a lung, and have a pump and go back. Looks kind of more like this. Okay, it's just access site. So here's the example of the cardio health that came through. Just a big circle loop.
So you need a femoral and an internal jugular?
Depending on what the underlying cause is. So yes, I'm going to say yes and no.
Can you do a subclavian? I'm just asking.
Yes,
So
and you could do axillary. We do IJ.
Right.
There's a new one in now that you go through the IJ. It's actually one cannula and it does both. It separates in, called the new one is ProTech and the old the Avalon. So you would actually just get one that goes into the patient from the IJ. And that's kind of where, depending on why they're on ECMO, where the access is.
So it's two big venous lines.
If it's VV.
If it's VV, okay.
Right.
If it's VA, one is in the artery?
One's in the artery and one's venous and one's arterial, correct. Okay. So here you have the one cannula come in on, these are both percutaneous and the groin. So the blue blood, the venous, coming all to us, going through our system and coming back through the femoral artery. So that's VA, but in the groin, okay? Here's an example of the neck. Here's the dual lumen. So this is actually fully supported. It's just one cannula, just one. And then where the holes are and how it is in the cannula itself. That's also, you will see one cannula, but it can provide VA. So instead of seeing two, you see one. And that's newer technology that's coming out. And you have to have a really good surgeon to be able to put that in. Problem with this and why some people don't like it, if it is too far down or too far up or not placed exactly, then you have big problems. It's very good when it works well. It's very not so good when it's not positioned correctly. And then you have volume, if your patient has volume problems and things like that. This is what you will see. Okay, obviously, this is in the neck. You see the difference of color. And then you're moving, so usually the system in the ECMO is somewhere down by the feet. So you're gonna have this tubing, it's 3/8 of an inch, all the way down, probably coming down toward the patient's abdomen, maybe by the knees and feet, and then comes and hooks up to a machine somewhere on the side or whatever. And I'm like, don't kink the lines, don't, because they kink, you stop blood flow. They have to be able to get that flow back. They have to be able to oxygenate again. This is what you're gonna see. Let alone all the IVs, they might have an NG tube, they have everything else hooked on. They're usually gonna have a swan by then, they're intubated, they have the ventilator going. And then if you're lucky, you might have an Impella, you might have a balloon pump, and then add the ECMO. So that's one site that you'll be able to see. What is the pump? You're like, okay, well, we're pumping. You guys are pumping. I'm pumping. It's just this little cone. I'm gonna show it to you there in the back. That's the motor. That little guy, anything happens to that or that shuts down suddenly, you're done. It's kind of like the battery. It's kind of like the battery of a car. Your transmission going. You're done. We are very protective of this. And this thing is a couple $1,000 just for that little component. This is the oxygenator. I'm going to show it to you, and we're going to take a look at some things. I brought one in the back. So, in other words, we use the Quadrox because they last longer. The ones that we use in the operating room are good for maybe 8 hours on bypass. They can last up to 24. These guys can last for days, weeks, months, depending on other components and things that happen. So, on adults, we use the Quadrox. What you will see here, you're going to have blue blood, your venous blood coming in. The gas exchange happens. I put in oxygen, blows off CO2, and red blood comes out. That would go to the patient. In here also are kind of like discs that we could warm and cool the patient depending on the needs. You know as well as I do that sometimes a little bit of colder patients, their metabolism slows down. Their demands are not quite as big. So if we have other things going on, we can actually cool the patient a little bit. And then you have the drowning patient that's cold, we can have the ability to warm them. So that goes back. That all happens in here. This is the main, the secondary main component. One was that pump that provides circulation, and here is your lung. You'll see that the oxygen is hooked up. You're going to see our water lines on each side that are hooked up, and that is the other thing that we're very protective of, that we can use eyes on. Hey guys, don't let that hang off at the end. This is turning. We're very protective of that component. Also not a cheap little thing. Here it is in a nutshell. The surface area is 1.8 meters squared. It's a lung. That's really all it comes down to. You have to be able to have oxygen going in. When I come to you guys saying, hey, make sure that you have tanks for down the hallways, and make sure that you have enough oxygen on the ambulance. Be able to provide. This is what it looks like when it's all red. Kind of confusing. What you're going to hear is, here's the motor that we talked about, and that is blue blood. This is the venous blood. Here's your cardiac output. Here's your heart. It's going to come in, comes in as blue blood, gets oxygen, gas exchange, comes back out, and it goes to the patient. It looks very messy. As you're going to see over here, because now, why do we say send me the big guy or the strong girls, send me a couple people? Just in this little picture, over here, that's a balloon pump. Have you guys ever seen balloon pumps? Those are the things that weigh a ton, because we can't disconnect that. So all of this has to come. And this is just like upstairs in the unit. Oh, add a bunch of cords in the mix. It all makes sense, and it is not easy. What are you looking at? What am I looking at? Here's where I can dial in my oxygen. I'm gonna show it to you over there, and how much CO2 I'm blowing off. Very easy just for one of these things to get bumped as we're going. That's why I ask you, just take a look, make sure there's a difference in color. Something just that simple can make a difference. We have our oxygen hookups. This is what we're gonna get. I always ask that you guys have at least an oxygen tank for your ventilator, an oxygen tank backup for me, an extra one we're in the hallway, because a lot of times you guys show up with little tanks that are about this big. I'm asking you to have at least 3 when you come. You guys are always really good about it. Now you just go somewhere and go get us one magically. I'm not sure how that happens, but you're always really good about it. Team effort. Like we talked about at the beginning, we need infusion, we need you guys, we need cardiology, how we're doing it. The interesting thing is, as we are taking over truly full function of patients in all aspects, even as we're going, as we're in the ambulance, everyone knows the most critical time for a patient usually is in transport. I'm sure you've been told that 1,000 times. It is not easy. It's not necessarily the safest, and it's not necessarily the most controlled. We are traveling without a physician in hand, which is why we rely on them heavily. I've worked with a couple of you guys, and I've been told personally, oh yay, she's here because she'll just tell us what to do. I've also been told, oh geez, it's her, she barks, but there's a reason why. Once you get to your arrival, and you don't know, depending, like you're talking, maybe you're at a tertiary hospital, how long of a ride you have to have. How we set this up, this is the pump itself. It's magnetic. It can pop out. It is very well secured, but we keep an eye on that as well. We have a flow probe. I'm going to show you that as well. Sometimes you're like, hey, what's your flow? And you're going to say it's 4 liters. You're like, oh no, it's 2. Well, first thing we're going to look at is your eyes, my eyes, everyone's eyes. It's going to be a flow probe. There's a little thing that connects onto it. Make sure that it's actually monitoring correctly. At the same time, then if it is monitoring correctly and we're down to 2 liters or 1.8, then what is happening? And then I need to address that and get that fixed. Things for nurses to consider, not so worried about. Typical what we want to see is about 4 to 5 liters of flow. Volume status of a CVP is about 8 to 12. And our ACT, your ACT was your coagulation. You're going to hear that conversation at least about 108. So these are numbers that you're going to be hearing as we're transporting. And you're like, oh, okay. So you just have some familiarity. Ultimately, always remember working together. We're treating the patient, not the pump. A lot of times you're like, oh, make this happen or change this. And there's a lot of conflicting ideas of what is best, but at the end of the day, it's always about the patient and not the pump. I'm going to show you, these are clamps. Kind of a hammer is kind of what, not construction guys, carpenters. Carpenters have a hammer, perfusionists have clamps. If something bad happens, you see blood splurting. Not that it happens, not that it couldn't happen, not that it hasn't happened. I work with clamps. Best thing better than a clamp are your 2 hands. You see something bad, I tell you, make sure flows are good, make sure the patient has flow. Anything bad that happens, you can take the tubing, and I'll show you, and literally just kink it off. You don't want the patient bleeding out. Same as if you have a big wound and you're going to apply pressure to make that stop, make the badness stop, and then you can address. I deal with clamps like a hammer. I can clamp things off, make adjustments. You can grab a clamp. You can also just use your hands. That's why I always have some in my pocket. There will be some in the bag. I might ask you, hang on to these for me. Only the reason why is just so I know where they are and who has them. Bleeding's an issue. We're going to always have volume with us when we go. Sometimes we might have to bring liters of fluid, sometimes albumin, of critical care. I will be asking you, hey, carry all this stuff for us. This is more science, things to remember. Can't forget the basics. Keep an eye on your patient, keep an eye on your colors, keep an eye on flows. Make sure oxygen is flowing and what you need. When it comes to you guys, key things that we're going to ask of you. I know, you probably know, back when Christians EMS, you guys as a whole system, started transferring from Missouri Baptist down to Big Barns, we put up a big stink that we wanted a yellow table. I tell you, do you know about the yellow table? Anybody? You're going to learn about a yellow table. When you have a patient on, what do you call it? Do you call it your stretcher, your gurney? What do you call it? The stretcher. And you're getting ready to support. There is a small yellow table that literally can go over the abdomen of the patient. It has these little like bird's legs, okay, and it goes over. I know you have one. I know it exists, and I know now that it's living at Missouri Baptist. We're going to be talking to your decision makers. We need one at Christian. The reason why you got that is because going down to Big Barns is critical in transport. And you guys were going to lose that contract unless you had that yellow table. So you got the yellow table. Without having the big rig to put all of our extra equipment, we need to be able to build on top of the patient. And that's where I'm going to be like, hold this as I secure this down, whatever. Having that yellow table will be very beneficial for all of us. So we're going to ask you to have a yellow table. What do you need to show up with? You need to come with your transport monitor. You're like, well, what do I really need to monitor when you're monitoring oxygenation, you're monitoring cardiac output, what are you going to monitor? I need to also know, depending if I have a balloon pump or anything else, you don't know what else I will have, but show up with a monitor. 50-50 chance that I'm going to use it. Even if I don't use it to monitor your blood pressures and everything else, usually you have a VenaSat that you can hook up. I like to have that on the road. Go, okay, what's my VenaSat? I do not monitor VenaSat on transport. So bring your monitor, make sure it's charged and has battery. Bring your ventilator. Again, why do you need a ventilator when I'm the heart and lungs and I'm breathing? You don't know how long of a ride. We've had craziness happen on the road. We still want you to be able to either ventilate or be able to handbag to try to keep those lungs expanding for us. So yes, bring the ventilator and bring the transfer ventilator. I think you have two different ones. I've seen two.
Those are two.
Oh, those are two. Okay, I've seen two different ones. I don't care what you bring, but bring a ventilator. And for some reason, there seems to be some, oh, I didn't know, or whatever. Yes, bring it. The more stuff you bring. Oxygen tanks. I'm going to ask for 3. One for the ventilator. I will always have one, but I want to back up. And then another one to carry. Usually just shove it somewhere underneath the patient's knees or whatever. And there's a reason for that, because even once you get to Barnes, Barnes is not a small place. The Christmas tree. Make sure that your ambulance that you show up with has that little Christmas tree for oxygen, because we're going to hook the gas line up to that. It's kind of not fun when you get downstairs and, oh, I didn't realize we needed that Christmas tree on your oxygen, because we're going to hook up to oxygen in your ambulance. Volume. I'm going to load you guys with volume. We talked about some of the bleeding and things like that. And then I ask for strong personnel. Not saying the girls aren't strong, but at least in the hospital before you get to the ambulance. By the time I get to the big house or anywhere else, I've usually, or someone's made phone calls. If we don't have a lot of people, they have strong people. We're lifting a patient. Your ambulance, you got to get them up there and high, and they're hooked to all these things. Usually we're going to have a balloon pump that weighs a ton. We're going to have a machine that's called an Impella back there, and we're going to have an ECMO. It is a lot. And guess who usually is not lifting at all? Me. And why? Because I'm watching. So that's where I'm like, hey, I need you to grab this. I need you to watch this. I need you. And they're like, dude, you're bossing us around, but you're not doing anything. That kind of, if I am stuck in holding myself, then I cannot watch everything else. And that's where we need strong hands. When we go, we definitely need lights and sirens. We are gonna go, we always get asked, do you want, if we're coming from at least Christian, do you wanna go the highway or the back route? We have finally learned, just take the highway. No, truly, because the other way up here is shorter, but there's a lot more turns, there's a lot more lights. When you have a patient that's open or bleeding or whatever have you, those small shifts and those bumps truly make a difference. Believe me, it's very stressful on us because you go over a bump and volume shifts and the next thing you know, flow drops and then it comes back and then, oh my goodness, now we have another bump. I mean, it's real. Just take the highway. Turn your sirens on, blow it, take the highway. We talked about the yellow table. Once you get to Barnes, everyone knows their way around. I'm sure you know how to get there. I know you know how to get to 5600. I'm sure you know how to get, let me tell you a true story. Not tell you when it happened, but it wasn't that long ago. I have a patient, we have a balloon pump, I have an Impella, I have an ECMO. Don't worry, I know how to get there. And I'm sitting here going, well, I don't remember. Just, you guys know, just take me. I literally get off the elevator, all of us with all this crap. We have our little oxygen tanks, and we end up when we get off and we're on the OB floor. It literally, it's not funny, but yeah, it happens. So we all get out, and mind you, there's like 6 of us, and I think I had 2 extra people, you know, helping of your crew, and you had this family literally in the hallway, and you're going, holy cow. I mean, for all they knew, they probably thought it was an OB patient or whatever. They have no idea. Totally not cool. We will go the same way every time now. We've kind of learned. We're going to go in. We're going to go up the ramp. So you guys, if you go to 5600, you're going to go in, go up the ramp to the left, up the elevator straight into 56th floor. Tell your friends, tell your buddies, tell your people. It's the only way we're going to go. And it's the safest way and it's the quickest way once we get there. We had another coworker of mine didn't end up on the OB floor, but ended up somewhere else. Because then I start to panic because these are on battery now. All the support is on battery, and we're on oxygen tanks. So you get lost and you get screwed. You're really screwed.
You're talking about the Southwest Tower elevator. Once you go in the ER, you go up the ramp. You'll pass like
Yes.
the one that's up the ramp. If you look to the left, it's the second one. Both of those, either or, will take you straight to 56.
Are you telling me that, or are you asking me
Tell
that?
me. I
Great.
did 4 years there.
Okay,
as a transporter.
perfect.
I know the layout like the
Good.
back of my hand.
So send him.
So you can
Send
either
him. He
go
can
up
lift
that
and he knows
ramp.
where to go.
You can either go up that ramp, or you can just go to that side one. Just tell one of the nurses, "Give me your badge," and they
They'll
lift
tell
your
you.
badge up.
Perfect. This is the machine that you're going to see here at Christian. I have it in the back. This guy is flowing 4.28 liters. We have RPMs. We have alarms, so anything under 2.5 is going to make a noise and alert me. Anything that goes over 5 liters is going to alert me. That happens to be my phone, my work phone number. You can write it down. Only if you're really good looking. You can pass that on. I am married, kids, but you know, it's out there. So that really should not be on there. Either way, in that situation or whatever, this is our pump. There's my phone numbers on top. Christian's phone numbers. Why do I say it gets really complicated when we wanted the big ambulance? This was a patient that I took from Christian maybe a month or 2 ago. What you have seen is I have a system back there. I'm gonna run a little over you, okay? Okay. I have a system back there. That pole and everything else did not come with. All those components I had to build on the patient. You can see, here's a foot. You cannot see. So when I talk about this yellow table, if I had the yellow table that's going on top, I could put the machine literally on top and I could build around that. We had a small IV pull that I put the motor on. Here's my lung, okay? Now you have the ventilator that you're gonna put onto the side because we're gonna have that. And I have a couple of IV pulls. Again, where's the patient? So now, this patient was cannulated. One in the groin, was she cardiac? Maybe they were both in the groin. Let's just pretend they were both down here. So that's where I'm like, hey guys, you want to wrap her up, you want to strap her in. I literally had to fight to make sure that I could see this because one kink here causes me problems. Here's my oxygen line. Here's the balloon pump. Okay, here's my lines to the balloon pumps. And you know, your structures, they're pretty narrow. So this was a patient, this is upstairs in our unit. Literally, I had to build on top of her, you could not barely even see her. Pretty intense. By the time I said, okay guys, we're ready, let's go. And you're going, holy crap, we're taking all this, and now we're going down the hall, downstairs. And now I need you guys to help me lift all this. It's not easy. And really, I rely on you all a lot. Here we are, we're in the ambulance. Oxygen tank is on top of the patient, so there's nowhere else to put it. I have a balloon pump sitting in the corner. You have that little cubby, that little open area, that's going in there. I have my backup ECMO, my backup motor, my backup car. Here's my oxygen. Here's my backup tank. This one, because at this point I have this line going all the way along to your Christmas tree, because I already yelled at somebody. Oh, and actually, we got downstairs, I got here. My line wasn't long enough. I had to run upstairs, get some connectors, JRX and stuff to get it to your wall. That was my problem, not yours. You guys had what you needed. I just didn't have enough length. Here's your transport vent that's going on to the side. I have a nurse sitting up at the head, and I have one of you guys as well. Know her? Anyone know her?
Yeah.
All right, so she did this run with us. Finally, we see a patient. Right? So it's a big deal. She was great. Actually, she did a really, really great job. I'm down by the feet. I'm having to ask, tell me pressure, tell me pressure. You know, she's shouting out numbers for me. What are we seeing? There's a lot of lines there. There's a, you know, and then she has the nurse behind. So the nurse, you can barely see. And how many IVs do we have going? A lot. Okay.
4, 5.
Yeah. It's a
8,
big
12.
deal. So that's the reality, and that's why we wanted to come down, so you kind of have an idea. And this lady actually was not that bad of a transfer because of where she was open. She was not bleeding. She was relatively stable. And this one went really smooth. And look at all the mess, right? We've arrived at Barnes, and now we're trying to get out. And you're like, oh, who's taking the pictures? Guess what? I took the pictures. Again, I'm not lifting. I'm watching, remember? But at the same time, now we have to get the patient out. We have all these things. You see the long lines. This is our lifeline going all the way around to her that's underneath the oxygen and everything else. Truly, it takes everybody. And then a few times we might have to disconnect and then try to reconnect. We're upstairs in the unit. We're at 5600. And now you can finally see her again. We have taken all the stuff off. And now we have unbuilt. And she is settling into the unit. We've switched systems onto her. So she was in there the whole time. You just never could see her. But having said that, all the things, the components that I'm watching. And we're on our way home. You guys are great. You guys usually wait for us. We pack up half the equipment in pieces, put it all in there. We're going to drive on home and come back. Big difference from just when we started. Here she is in the unit after I built, okay? Here she is in the ambulance. This is as we're going. This is when we're coming out. Wanted you to have a kind of a realistic image of what you'd be walking into and why, one, we're very happy to see you. I'm going to show you a few things very quickly, because I know you're next, I don't want to bore you.